So, yeah, whenever you're ready. So, you were here for.
So I'm here in Montreal for the climate change conference that Michel Bouffard put on, which was really quite an interesting conference, great speakers. And I also did a tasting of wines from Quebec for the first time, tasted a number of them. And it got me to thinking about what's happening in the Canadian wine industry and the evolution that has occurred. I think the sign of the fact that the wine industry is becoming significantly important in Canada, and also in terms of understanding what the evolution actually is the fact that we are so much now looking so far beyond the areas that most people look at Canada and think, okay, they produce wine in the Okanagan and they produce wine in Niagara. When we look at BC, Similkameen Valley, I think, is doing some absolutely outstanding things. In fact, I think if you look at the Okanagan and Similkameen Valley, these are no longer emerging regions. These regions have emerged. Yes, they are continuing to evolve as most wine regions around the world are evolving, or producers within the regions are evolving. Even if you look at Ontario and what's happening in Prince Edward County, which is absolutely outstanding, and I think, again, we don't look at Prince Edward County necessarily as being emerging, and I think that's predominantly because Norman Hardy has just done such an outstanding job of giving that region so much notoriety, but there's other producers in the area that are making some fantastic wines as well. And we look at what's happening in Nova Scotia. Here's an area that is getting recognition around the world, particularly for their sparkling wines. And so it's interesting to see because we have areas in this country that I think you can't look at and say these are emerging wine regions anymore. So Canada as a country has emerged. We are probably in many ways the most significant wine producing country in the world that still a lot of the world knows nothing about. And so in many ways, I think we are called emerging simply because of the fact that not enough people really recognize what we're doing. That is starting to change. The process is always the same. The first is to really understand what grapes are going to grow best in their particular sites, which means understanding your microclimates, understanding your soil, and understanding the terroir. And also understanding one of the things that we face in a lot of areas in Canada, and that is our winters, and how do we deal with our harsh winters. And part of that discussion also involves the use of hybrids versus the use of vinifera. And there's still a lot of producers in northern BC, in Nova Scotia, on Vancouver Island, in Quebec, and even in Ontario that are using hybrids. It's really interesting to see where our country has really moved towards, because the evolution in quality is evident. I mean, it's so clear that over the last 20 years, the quality of our wines has grown, has increased exponentially. And we can be very proud and confident that we're producing wines that are comparable with some of the best quality wines in the world. There's no question about that. But I think where the evolution really has occurred over the last few years is really expressing vineyard site. To truly have an industry mature, it's not going to happen overnight. I mean, we only get one harvest a year, so as the vines age, it's going to take some time, and understanding how vinifera is going to grow in these areas as people are starting to experiment that in Quebec, for example. So it does take time, but I think Canada is well on its way in terms of having established itself as a major, serious wine-producing country, and the rest of the world is recognizing it. And anybody in the world who is in the wine industry who doesn't recognize it really doesn't know, doesn't have a complete understanding of the wine industry. Because really, if you don't know Canadian wines, you really don't know wine.